A recent series of court decisions against Caster Semenya have upheld the IAAF's new DSD regulations, effectively banning her from competition. But did you know that the scientific justification for the regulations centres upon a single discredited study? Let's find out more. In 2011, following Semenya's rise to prominence amid often disgraceful and intrusive media coverage, the IAAF introduced new hyperandrogenism regulations, restricting participation in women's events to those with serum testosterone levels below 10 nanomoles per litre. These regulations were overturned in 2015, following a lawsuit brought by Dutee Chand. The court ruled that the IAAF had produced no evidence that endogenous testosterone differences in women contributed to a significant athletic advantage. At this point, it's worth addressing a question you're likely asking. Is there a link between testosterone and athletic performance? Yes. Yes, there is. There is a link, but it's a whole lot less straightforward than many might imagine. We know that large doses of exogenous testosterone can aid muscle growth in cases such as doping. We also know that testosterone is the main driver of sex determination and male puberty. We also know that trans women who undergo HRT lose muscle mass, bone density, and hemoglobin levels. But just because T plays some role in sports performance, it does not necessarily follow that reading off a single number, serum testosterone concentration, is a valid measure of somebody's ability to benefit from it. It may not be as simple as high T good, low T bad. Having more testosterone isn't helpful if you have high testosterone because your body isn't very sensitive to it. Studies have not generally found a clear relationship between T level and performance. For example, one recent study of male athletes found that many have unusually low testosterone, especially powerlifters. So the question presents itself. Does variation in endogenous testosterone levels among women athletes predict differences in performance? And do women with naturally high T tend to perform better than those with lower T? Common sense seems to suggest so, but common sense also seems to suggest that the sun revolves around the earth and that heavy objects fall faster than lighter objects. We do science precisely because the truth is often counterintuitive. In Chand, the court ruled that they needed direct evidence. But at the time, no large-scale study showed a link between endogenous testosterone levels and performance in female athletes. Told they needed evidence, the IAAF commissioned a study of their own. Fortunately, the study, which was funded by the IAAF and whose authors are both paid employees of the IAAF, had a fairly simple design. It took data on testosterone levels from women athletes at the 2011 and 2013 World Championships, divided them into high T and low T groups, and compared the average performance of these groups. The results were not what they were expecting. That is, high T having a positive effect across the board, with the largest effect in events with the largest gender gap. Instead, for most events, the effect was negative. In only 3 track events and 2 field events was testosterone found to have a barely statistically significant positive association with performance. The most statistically significant result overall being that high T predicts poorer performance in the 100 metres. The only justifiable conclusion would be that the study found no clear relationship between serum testosterone level and performance. Instead, they concluded that they had found such a relationship for the 3 track events, 400 metres, 400 metre hurdles and 800 metres, for which they found a result that was both positive and borderline significant. The IAAF used this result to declare certain events to be restricted events, claiming they now had evidence that variation in endogenous testosterone in women athletes did predict performance in these specific events. Now, testosterone limits apply only to these restricted events, with no limits whatsoever for most events. Also, unlike the previous hyperandrogenism regulations, which apply to all women with serum T above 10 nanomoles per litre, the new regulations, which reduce the limit to 5 nanomoles per litre, apply only to women with differences of sex development, or DSDs. Women affected by the regulations will have to take drugs to artificially lower their testosterone if they wish to compete. Let's be clear about this. If a woman without a diagnosed DSD and a woman with a DSD both have the same serum testosterone level and compete in the same event, the second woman may be disqualified while the first is not. This despite the fact that many DSDs, such as androgen insensitivity disorder, actually reduce the athlete's ability to enjoy the full effects of testosterone. If this decision strikes you as entirely arbitrary, then wait until you hear about which events were restricted. Not only were the free track events for which significant positives were found restricted, but so were all other middle distance events. This despite the fact that the only middle distance event besides the 800 meters to be evaluated in their study showed a negative relationship between testosterone and performance. They justified this bizarre decision on the grounds that, when it comes to middle distance events, aptitude for one will lend itself easily to the others. Further, despite significant positive results being found for hammer throw and pole vault, these events were not restricted. Why are some events with significant positive effects not restricted, while others with negative effects are restricted? I don't know. On an unrelated note, Caster Semenya competes exclusively in these middle distance events. This may seem bad already, but it gets worse. When a team of independent scientists checked a sample of the data from the IAAF study, they discovered that many data points were duplicates. Some belonged to athletes who were disqualified for doping, while many more were for times that had not been recorded at either championship. I'll say that again. Some data points used to calculate significant results for the 400 meter to 800 meter categories appear to be entirely unaccounted for. No athlete ever ran these times in the competitions in question. The source of these phantom data remains a mystery. In total, the problematic data points make up between 17 and 33% of the data points used for the free track events for which significant positive effects were found. The team was unable to calculate the correct performance effects for these events, as, for privacy reasons, times could not be matched with medical data, so we don't know what the true results should be. However, the average overall time for all three events increased when the bad data was removed, suggesting that the effect is likely to be reduced from borderline significant to insignificant. To date, the original paper has not been retracted, nor has the journal published a correction notice. This raises an uncomfortable question. Is the IAAF genuinely interested in an evidence-based approach to protecting the integrity of women's athletics? Or are they interested only in cherry-picking evidence to justify ad hoc regulations that target specific athletes? Regardless, the science behind the regulations is, at best, fatally flawed, and the manner of its application is arbitrary and capricious.